all the rest. And there we are. We're live. Welcome everybody to
Hi,
another. Yeah, hello everybody, and hello my wife. So here we go. Let's see. We are live on Thursday, and this is our Q&A time, right? Our time of dialogue, that kind of stuff. So I'm just looking for the live video for a second so that I can share it. There we go. And here we go. Share so everybody knows. And there we are. So welcome everybody to our Thursday Q&A where you, the viewer, or it doesn't necessarily have to be viewers, people that we just interact with, submit questions and questions about the spiritual life, their struggles, because as I've said in past live streams, the Christian life has often been known as a life of struggle, and the early monastic communities called themselves fellow strugglers.
I'm trying to find our Instagram.
And we're live on Instagram, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook, we're live everywhere we can go. So just seeing Annette has jumped on, Berta has jumped on. Great to see you guys. Wonderful to be here with you. It's always a fun time doing these and responding to questions.
I'm not sure you are live on Instagram. I can't actually click on it. It won't let me.
Well, I can't. I don't know. So.
Well,
we will. If we're not live on Instagram, we apologize. So.
Says we are, but I'm not allowed to.
Okay. Well.
Open it.
Well, we'll trust that.
If you are on Instagram, sorry, I can't see your comments because. Something's gone funny.
Yeah. Anyway, maybe we'll try it again in a minute. So welcome to the Q&A. I've said that a couple of times now. Yeah. Yes. And I'm excited about this topic today. And everybody let us know if the audio is okay. Those kind of things. So I'm excited about today's topic. And because it's it's something that we have in having an outreach focus to some of the new age things, right? The particular topic, it kind of hits home in some of those areas, in some of those places that we've been.
Sure.
Yeah. So essentially this question was posed. Great. Berta says everything is fine. And everything's fine because Berta prays for us. That's why everything is fine. Yeah. So some of you know, on Tuesday, we had a medical thing happen with our family. And so we were able to go live. I know some people saw that, that comment on our dream group. So, but things are returned to normal as well as it can.
Yeah, everyone is okay.
Everyone's okay. Yeah. So, yeah. So thank you for your prayers. Yeah, for sure. I know a number of you were praying and messaged me and saying you were praying. So thank you for that. So anyway, the topic at hand is, I think it's something that it gets brought up anytime you start exploring the Christian teaching on prayer. And, the way it was couched on one of our live streams was a question by David Boda, who tunes in frequently, and a friend of ours, actually interned with streams the same way we did years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
So David had asked the question at one point, what are our thoughts about the difference between, the New Age, well, I can't remember exactly how he put it, but the topic at hand is the difference between prayer and Eastern mysticism and prayer and Christianity. And that is...
He said, I would love to hear your thoughts on how this pursuit of God's presence, which I think is what we were discussing that time.
Which we discuss all the time, right? This is a topic.
Is different from a New Age pursuit of oneness with the divine.
Yeah.
Which is a common term you hear in Eastern mysticism.
Yes.
So that was his question from February.
Yeah. So
and it's a really good question. It's common question.
Yeah, well, and so you go through some of it's kind of thing that you could talk about for a long time, right? In the sense of what the history of why people think that way, what people have said about that, the different religious approaches, that kind of thing.
I think you could probably do a legitimate dissertation on the just the history.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, there's so the because it goes so far back.
Yeah.
Right. It's centuries,
that's
millennia old. But I think it's rooted in the church in particular and in our present day.
Yeah.
It does come up when you talk about prayer. It definitely comes up if you start talking about prayer and using words like meditation.
Sure.
Or
contemplation.
Yeah. Thank you. These kind of things. And I think it's because, like in my experience, the church has like a lot of misconceptions about what New Age is,
sure,
or Eastern mysticism, and a lot of fear.
Yeah, for sure.
And so people we see that a lot of times where if you tell someone to sit, soak, if you use these kind of words, like, well, that's New Age.
Soaking in the Father's presence.
And I think so. There's quite a bit of fear. And then there's a lot of misconceptions or assumptions, which assumptions and fear is never really a helpful mix.
Yeah, that's right. That's very true.
And then on the other hand, on the flip side of that, I think you do need to have an awareness.
Right.
Because those type of practices and spirits are very real.
Yeah, that's
they
right.
are a reality in the spiritual realm. And there is an enormous amount of deception. Sure. Like there's a whole other side to that as well, that I think there is a lot of that stuff in the church and there is deception. So you're kind of working with both.
Yeah. You've got some pretty well-known contemporary authors, like throwing out one name, Thomas Merton. So Thomas Merton, do you know who Thomas Merton?
I'm like trying to remember, but probably I'm really not good with knowing.
I like poking fun
because all the names and I don't know.
Yeah, Thomas Merton is a contemporary author. He's not alive now. He passed away a few years ago, but he wrote in the late 1900s, and he was a monk, and I'm trying to. It's like on the tip of my tongue what kind of monk he was, but I mean he's Christian. And wrote significantly about the life of prayer. And the further you dive into some of Thomas Merton's stuff, which I've read a few of his books, and he's got some great stuff to say on prayer, but you can see where he started to become more involved with the idea that the typical term people use, the technical term is syncretism, where you look at the similarities between different faiths and find the common bond between all of them, right? This is called syncretism. So basically all faiths are one is what the idea ultimately comes to be. So Thomas Merton kind of moved in that direction and learned a lot from some of the Eastern mystical literature later in his life. In terms of, when I say Eastern mysticism, I would classify that particularly under the writings in Hinduism, the writings of specific yogis that were teaching in Hinduism, and then Buddhist spirituality, and probably, into a lesser extent, Baha'i spirituality. So those would be the three typically that are referenced when it comes to Eastern mysticism, in my experience anyway. And you've got some on the fringes like Zoroastrianism, and
you don't know what that is.
So that'd be the ancient Babylon faith religion. So that one is kind of, there's
just
certain threads of it.
Remind you, since you're talking about ancient history, that we have about 25 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody needs to know. I only have 25 minutes to get it across. So Berta, her question, isn't soak and dwell the same? Yeah, essentially. So. Yeah, just different terms in different circles. Yeah. So anyway, you've got all of these disparate threads that kind of make up what we think of today as New Age type of practices, right? I remember being in India a number of years ago and having pastors lament the practices you'd find on the street corner there.
Right.
And the same thing when I've been in other countries, that you will find quote unquote spiritualist practitioners. Like I remember in one country I was walking around and people would bring a photo of a loved one
I remember
that they wanted to die.
Yeah.
Like especially parents that they were elderly and they couldn't take care of anymore. They'd bring it to the spiritualist practitioner and they would curse the photo, right?
Yeah.
And that was a common thing. Like there was droves of people lined up in front of these women that would take their shoes and smack the photo. And the whole point of smacking it was cursing that person so they die. And because you can't dishonor in that culture that was happening in, right? You can't dishonor the parents, but you don't want to take care of them anymore.
Right. They become a financial burden.
Yeah. Exactly. So anyways, weird practices in our context, right? That's pretty normal for them. And these, I'm talking about different countries I've been to, that kind of stuff. I've seen different things like that. So we those things you don't necessarily see on the street corner here, right? In North America, but you do see it when you go to New Age fairs. Yeah. That time, maybe not specifically people smacking a photo with a shoe, but you do see some of those the influence of those types of ideologies in the New Age fairs, for sure.
I think it's certainly happening in North America, but it's just not as in the open.
Yeah, for sure.
You'd have to look a little bit to find it.
Yeah, for sure.
But all this stuff is, I
remember being at
because the same spirits are everywhere.
I remember being at one marketplace where you're walking down and you can buy, clothes and cell phone accessories, all kinds of different stuff, right? Handcrafted things. And then there was one particular section where it was just all lined with the spiritual people, where you would go and do whatever they do, psychic readings and that kind of stuff. Very commonplace, right? In terms of, and here, if you went to, say, a farmer's market, you might find one. You might see it. You might see one. It's not
the common.
No, but you're talking like, I'm talking like there were, if at least dozens, if not hundreds of stalls committed to it, right? This wasn't a small time thing.
Right.
So anyway, that has largely influenced then the North American view of New Age spirituality. So, so it's taken from various different strains, right? So there's not necessarily a codified, this is the New Age oneness with the divine, right?
Yeah.
So you got to look at, there's various different strains of what that looked like. So you can look at the, and I'll say this, on the surface level, when you look at just a mere surface approach to looking at what people have said about Christian prayer, looking what people have said about prayer in Eastern traditions, like Buddhism, like Hinduism, like the teachings of the Yogis and all those kind of things. There does seem to be a commonality.
And over like
they'll use like you can read some Hindu prayers and they'll reference praying to the Lord. Yeah. Right. They'll reference the experience of peace. Right. They'll use actually in some Eastern traditions, they'll talk about praying to the Father.
Yeah, I've had conversations with different spiritualists where they ask me, what does your prayer look like? What is that experience like? And as you talk about it, they will say, well, I do the same thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you're right. And it's on a surface level.
Yeah. That's what I mean. On the surface level, you see similar references.
I think it's the destination that is so different.
Yeah.
And at some point, I think it's like a train track.
Yeah.
Like for a while you're on the same one, but at some point there's a divergence.
Right.
And you're going to go here and you're going to end up like in two wildly different locations at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the very beginning journey looks very similar.
Yeah, you would go.
It's just not taking you to, and
that sounds like what my pastor over here said.
Well, and that is why we need discernment.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there is an element of deception.
Yeah.
We have to remember, and this is probably why Jesus said things like, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Like, that's where I lead.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You have to trust that there's a truth and then there's not.
Yes.
It's not I'm one of.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's this idea that you can syncretize Christianity and Buddhism and Hinduism and the teachings of the Yogis and the Baha'i faith, and look, they're all the same, right? They still talk about the same things. But you're right in that on a surface level they may look the same, but once you start exploring what they actually mean when they say those various different things, right? The ideology determines the outcome.
Yeah.
And the outcome varies wildly between approaches.
Yeah.
And so in order to compare them and say they're the same, you really have to strip them of the terms of their meaning, right? And the contextual meaning in each tradition. And which is what you see people doing, is they strip the terms there, right? So like we've done a lot of outreaches to New Age fairs, right?
Yep.
That's been a thing that we've done, where we do dream interpretation and prophetic ministry, that kind of stuff. And lots of those people would talk about hearing the voice of God, and that'd be a perfectly normal thing for them to.
I will say that they often seem to have a better understanding. There's a lot of deception, but they do seem to have a little bit better understanding of the spiritual realm.
Well, we'll say appreciation, maybe not understanding. Yeah.
Well, they have a belief that it exists.
Yeah.
They seem to accept the reality that it is real.
I'd say they lack understanding, but they have a better appreciation.
Yeah, they totally lack understanding because they're very deceived, and they can't discern between truth and a lie.
Yeah.
But I've met an equal number of people in the church who have trouble accepting that there is a spiritual realm.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Right. And if you start to use terms like light and darkness, they're lost. Whereas if you use those terms with someone in a new age, you can say things to them like, I suspect you've encountered a lot of lights, and they'll say yes. And you'll say, but have you been able to speak to the real light?
Yeah.
And they'll look at you and go, no, that's the one I can't get near.
Yeah, that's right.
And you can say things like, well, that's the one you want to get to.
Yeah, that's right.
These ones, they're not connected.
Yeah.
And they'll, like, if they're open enough,
right.
Which I love these conversations because you can just unleash your inner weirdo.
Yeah. Yes.
And I've always had a heart to speak to like alternative spiritual people.
Right, for sure.
I've always wanted to do that. So I like that.
Right.
It's just with Christians, you have to walk them through a lot of fears and convince them it's real. Right. And with New Age people, you have to walk them also through some fear, but of God usually, and help them realize that there's deception as well.
Yes.
That they're in.
Right. The general approach when it comes to like comparing the three main Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianity, I know if anybody that has like researched this listens to me talking about it, they might get frustrated because I'm definitely oversimplifying it because of our time.
Right.
And, so it's something you could study ad nauseum.
So that's your disclaimer.
So that's my disclaimer. Yeah. Is that but I'm not saying that I'm speaking from a lack of understanding. I'm just saying that I'm simplifying it on purpose. Right. So in terms of Buddhist spirituality, the end goal is that you become nothing. That's the purpose, right? In terms of, because there's no Buddhist spirituality, it's really not a spirituality. There's no God. It's more a philosophy. But so the prayer in Buddhist spirituality is that you become nothing.
Yeah.
And oneness with the divine is it's a misnomer because there is no divine. That ultimately you are the and so everything I'll reference. I've got a couple prayers selected that you can see the differences between the two. So I'll just reference those in a second. But in the Buddhist tradition, you are becoming nothing. That's the whole point of emptying yourself.
Yeah, it's all about emptying everything.
And by means of the emptying, you attain peace because there's no longer chaos, right?
Yeah.
And so then,
really, when you think about it, it doesn't just mean releasing yourself of negative things.
Yes.
Right. Peace means nothing. No joy.
Yes.
No hope.
Yes.
No happiness.
Yes. It's nirvana.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the ultimate state.
It's quite frightening.
Yeah. In the teaching, because I referenced the yogis because yoga is a result of the teachings of the yogis, which is the thread line of Hinduism when it comes to the teaching in Hinduism. And the point of that is that you become one with everything. Right. Because everything is a God.
Yeah.
Everything it's interesting when you walk down the streets of a city, a major city, any city really, doesn't even have to be a major city. You can be even in the rural areas in India. You will see shrines everywhere.
Right.
Like the shrine could be as big as your coffee mug right there. Right. But it's honoring a particular spirit that is a god of that thing. Everything is a god.
Wow.
So the gods in Hinduism are basically unlimited. You know, you can't really measure them all. And so
the pursuit or the path is to become one with all of that. So
that
again,
you can experience all of it and become a God yourself.
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Yes. So that's, Hindu or Buddhism is you become nothing. Hinduism, you become one with everything. It's really a very pantheistic religion, right? And then in Christianity, you become one with God, who is very perfectly defined in the person of Jesus.
Yeah.
So you don't have this ill-defined characteristic of God, or this pantheon of gods that you become one with, or this nothingness that you become one with. So you can say peace is the process of that in every one of those. Peace is an aspect of prayer in every one of those, right? So you can have the same kind of language,
but what peace means
is vastly and very different.
Right.
And what the experience means is vastly different and very different. And this is why some people, they get frustrated with Christianity. They end up finding some solace in the Baha'i faith, because the Baha'i faith is a very loosely defined, disconnected set of teachings on the nature of the spiritual life or religion. It's not really a codified religion, but there would be a one God. This one God would be unknowable to a certain extent, right? So, that means that the difference between prayer in the Eastern traditions and the difference in the prayer in the Christian tradition, which ultimately Christianity is an Eastern religion. That's how it started, right? That's true. Is one source and two outcome, and those produce a very different result, or a very different method, or a very different means.
Right.
So, you may, like in one of the typical prayer practices in Christianity is the prayer, the Jesus prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. So, like, for instance, here's another one, by the way, before I say that. The term sin in Christianity and the term sin in Buddhism and the term sin in Hinduism exists in all three, but has a very, very different definition in all three. So, so the Jesus prayer is something that you would say on your breath, right? And then you'd look at Buddhism would have certain mantras that you might say. Well, that would be Hinduism. Mantras that you say, right? Be the Yogis would have a mantra. Right. So I remember one outreach we were at where we were situated across from the display stage and there was a group that kept bringing a video of their yogi up onto the stage, and they would play him doing a guided meditation for 15 minutes. It was super distracting for what we were doing. And the video was literally their guy decked out in all of his weird yogi gear, sitting there, and he was just reiterating the same phrase over and over again. And the phrase was, "You are not even your body, you are not your mind," over and over and over again, just for 15 straight minutes. And he had this really droning voice, so it just sucked you right in, right? Right. And so, there's and so the people will go, "Oh, look, well, you Christians, you just repeat the Jesus prayer. Right. This is what we do, right?" Right. But the point is, think of the content, right? Well, you aren't yourself. That's the whole point of his thing, right? Different. And the whole point of the Jesus prayer is you will only know yourself if you know Jesus. Right. So it's so different. It's vastly different. Yeah. You can't even be compared. But because the practice seems relatively similar at a surface level investigation, you're like, "Oh, we're doing the same thing." No, you're not. No, actually, you're doing very different things. It makes sense that they would do different work in similar ways, though, because we know we're all created by the same God. Yeah, for sure. So we're all created to function the same way. Right. And so you've got people here who have tapped into a technique that works with how we're created to function, right? So it makes sense to me that there would be things that do look the same, and that you're using the same mechanism. Yeah. But you're getting two vastly different results from it. Yes. So here's a prayer from it's an Indian prayer from India. Right. Here's one. This is from a book, the Oxford Book of Prayer. It's full of a bunch of Christian prayers from history, but it's got a short section on each one of the different faiths. Right. So it has prayers from the Greek religions, Zoroastrianism, Baha'i, Muslim prayers, all that stuff. Right. So here's one from India. "Love is the firstborn. loftier than the gods, the fathers and men. You, O love, are the eldest of all, altogether mighty. To you we pay homage. Greater than the quarters and directions, the expanses and vistas of the sky. You, O love, are the eldest of all, altogether mighty. So love, see how the idea of God is a depersonified God.
Right.
Love is higher than the God. Love is an ideal, and love is the
Right.
highest ideal, right? So you have language that talks about love, that talks about God, all that kind of stuff, right?
Well,
Even
we would
firstborn,
go, oh,
right?
great, love, that's God.
Yeah, for sure. But you have in Christianity, you have God is love, and love is personified in the person of Jesus, and has very significant characteristics.
Right.
In the Indian prayer here, as an example, love is depersonified.
Yes.
It's given an ID. It's given an ideal, not a personhood, right? So you've got very different approaches to what the experience of love would be. Love would be losing yourself in that prayer. In a Christian prayer, God is love. Love is finding God and experiencing Him in a very tangible, practical way, right? So those are so
different.
different as to be not even comparable.
Yeah.
And then you've got something like here, just a short. It's funny that prayers in the Eastern portion of this, in that sense, aren't really prayers. They're more statements about what the spiritual life is about. They're less prayers. So here's one. This was from the 8th century, and this is in the Buddhist tradition. It says, "I see the pure and the transcendent without defect. By seeing is man's salvation." See, everything about salvation, or everything about, and that, so they use the same language, right? Again, salvation, we'd use salvation, right?
Language.
Very familiar language. But in that context, you're your own salvation.
Yeah.
Right? If you can figure out how to see, and the process of seeing is pursuing the most excellent, lofty things, then you have saved yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So the end result is you.
Which that became a very, like, Carl Jung was at near the end of his career. He was, he traveled to India. He was highly, if you look through all his writings, he has so many writings, but if you look through the end, he was completely immersed in Eastern mysticism.
Yes.
That's where he has a theory. You can look up the Jungian theory of synchronicity.
Yes, that's right.
And that's where that came from. I've been to his institute in Switzerland. And so the garden is, it's all like hedges that have been shaped into a giant mandala.
Yeah.
And so he was very into that. But this idea is what he brought into his psychology. And you can see that trickle down effect into present day. You don't have to go to a Jungian psychologist, but that belief system was so prolific.
Right.
And you'll see that even in Christian like some of them, not all, but you can see the Jungian influences. And what you find is it can be tricky to discern it because it is so similar.
Yeah.
But Jung essentially taught that with the right, instead of, it wasn't necessarily spirituality for him, but it was with the right interventions. You can become one with your darkness and one with your light, and thus bring yourself salvation and freedom.
So here's another one. This is the Buddhist tradition. He beholds himself purified of all. This is about the enlightened person. He beholds himself purified of all unskilled states. He beholds himself freed. When he beholds himself freed, delight is born. So it's all about how you behold yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's in Christian prayer. You're not beholding yourself.
No.
Right. You're beholding the Father.
Yeah.
Right. Which says Jesus, Paul says it in 1 or 2 Corinthians. He says, we are being transformed.
Yeah.
Right. Into the image of his glory.
Well, we die to our old self.
So very different, right?
This
different
is
context.
Very the opposite.
Here there's another one. It's again, a lot of it's just statements in terms of how the prayer happens. Right. I shall seek to develop the perfection of generosity, virtue, doing without, wisdom, energy, forbearance, truthfulness, resolution, love, and serenity. Right. Well, and we would go, those are all good things, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But here's a big difference between that. And we can even define generosity in very similar terms between Buddhist spirituality and Christian spirituality. But here's the thing is the problem with that is you can't seek to do that. This is Paul's point in 1 Corinthians 13 is that love does those things. And so the only way that those things are accomplished in your life is to receive love from God.
Right.
It's not to seek to do it. It's to seek to be with him.
Yeah.
And in being with him, you become his image and you do those things.
Right.
So it's so different as to be non-comparable.
Right.
So I don't think you can find a similarity between the two, because the starting point, the process, and the end result are so vastly different.
Well, and once you understand the definitions,
yeah,
right, and you understand that you can't just take the words at face value as you understand them from a Christian perspective.
Yes.
It becomes
that's
really
what
clear.
Happens.
Well, and that's understandable because we do that with everything.
I can see what happens, and why New Age stuff is so attractive in North America is because I can get rid of Christianity and still be spiritual.
Well,
because I've superimposed my belief and I've just removed Jesus.
Yeah.
Right.
And you've removed the challenge.
But now
Christian.
Now what I'm doing is I'm still a Christian in ideology, but I'm attempting to practice the same faith from a completely different paradigm.
Yeah.
And so I can so what happens is you invent, and then this is what the New Age does, is you invent means through which you can contact God.
Yeah.
Which you have a crystal, right, that you wear at all times. And so you become incredibly superstitious. I have an angel that directs me. I have a spirit guide that I have to talk to, right? You no longer have access.
Yeah.
But you want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So you've just superimposed one thing onto another, but removed all the important elements.
Yeah.
And now you've got this mishmash that just doesn't work together.
No, and it doesn't work because, well, when we've done all these outreaches, and one of the more significant ones has been Burning Man, which draws by its nature.
Right.
It draws people who are very heavily practicing all sorts of things, and they come in and they're wearing crystals that have been in an energy wheel for a year, and they have all their spirit guides and stuff.
Yeah.
But what you'll find, because you can talk with people there for a long time, like a few hours.
Right.
And what you'll discover really quick, once they realize you're just there to hear them.
Right.
You're not there to judge them. The facade will drop, and you'll find out quickly that it's not working.
Right.
Is what you'll find out.
Yeah.
Right.
That's very true.
They're very confused. They're not peaceful.
Yeah.
Right? They will come to you and say, I'm holding on to this. I can't get this. I need your help. And here's the list of things I want to there's tons of chaos.
Right.
And they just don't understand. There's just a lot of deception.
Yes.
They genuinely, I think a lot of them, in my experience, there's genuine desire for something good and to be a good person.
Yes.
There's just heaps of deception.
Here's the thing.
Right? They're not trying to project something bad onto the world, though. In fact, very much the opposite.
Yeah, they think they're doing themselves and others a service.
They'll tell you they're really lost.
But here's the thing. I think this is the most damning thing about all of it. Is most people, I would hazard a guess at every single person on the face of this earth, but I'll say most people, because maybe someone wants to disagree with me. The greatest desire of most people is to be known. And I think that's why social media has been so wildly successful.
Yeah, they want to be seen.
Right? I want to be seen.
Yeah,
I want to be heard. I want to be known. If you choose a path that ends in nothingness, how can you possibly hope to know yourself?
Yeah.
And how can you possibly hope to be known by others?
Yeah.
If your path is nothingness, you get the end result,
which is
nothingness. Yeah. That's the vast difference between Christianity and the path.
Well, and everyone
the path of Christianity is becoming something.
Yeah.
The path of the alternative is becoming nothing. You'll never discover yourself if the path is becoming nothing.
And I think the irony is that when you're on the path to nothing, your community, everyone around you, is also on the path to nothing, which actually makes it, you're all very self-absorbed.
Yes.
Right? Like you have to be. To do that outworking, you have to be constantly concerned about yourself and where you're at, which doesn't allow you to see anyone else and doesn't allow someone else to see you.
Yeah.
Because to produce that outworking, you have to only look at yourself to lose yourself.
Exactly.
If that makes sense. And so you've got a community of people that from the outside looks really inviting, maybe even better than church. I will say, right? Because you've got people who are helping each other and they're all like on this beautiful path together.
Right.
But the amount of people I've heard confess their, like, the depth of their loneliness.
Yeah.
Even though they're traveling together, and it's not like they don't have friendships.
Right.
I don't mean that, but there's a deep longing and a deep
to be
loneliness
seen, to be known,
because
to
they're
be
not
heard.
being seen.
But your path is one of emptying yourself and becoming nothing.
And it's a
in
path
doing
that doesn't
you'll become
allow,
nothing.
there's no companions on that path.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a
that's
solitary
so
journey.
It is. Yeah. Whereas juxtaposed with Christianity, the Christianity is forsake not the gathering of the brethren.
Yeah.
The prayer, there's a corporate thing about prayer. Anyway, it's so vastly different to not even be comparable. Like I said, on a surface level, it seems comparable, but once you start investigating, it's like, this is so wildly different that you can't compare the two. And so that brings us to the close of our conversation, but also the book.
Tell us about the book.
Tell us about the book, because if you've at all been stirred by the conversation, this book is all about the process of becoming like God and what happens in the transformation journey. And so, this to me, this book really codifies what Christianity says about the nature of the spiritual life, right?
Yeah.
And so this book is we just got the shipment, right? We've got a bunch of books now. The pre-order process is going on.
Of them, right?
No, I got rid of the boxes and I put them in the. They're over there. Yes. So the pre-order process is going on. In the description of the video, you can find a place to pre-order it. The book is called Transformation: Catching a Glimpse of the Beauty of God. So in the Eastern tradition, it would be transformation, catching a glimpse of the ultimate nothingness. Right. Mm-hmm. And beauty is found in divesting yourself of all identity and stripping yourself of everything that's unique about you. And it's just, I so wildly disagree with that. And so the book is available for pre-order. I know a bunch of you have pre-ordered it already. And right now we're running a pre-order special that if you pre-order the book from the Wind web store, which again, you'll see on the link, you will get a free Desert Father devotional. Yeah. We'll throw one of those in for you, just that's a pre-order thing, a limited time. Pre-orders go till May 23rd, and so the book is out. And check out the link. Mm-hmm. I think it'll be a helpful thing for the people that like the kind of conversations that we have. Anyway. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, with that said, anything to add? I don't think so. No. Good. That was a good topic. Yeah. I like, because I don't know a ton about the history of it. My experience is it's very experiential. Yeah. You've been involved in a lot of outreach to those kind of communities. Yeah. And so, but then you bring all the history, and I really appreciate that. That's kind of what we do, isn't it? Yeah. You love history. You married someone who struggles to enjoy history to the same degree. Yes. But on that note, we'll be back next week. Yeah, that's right. Next week. Next Thursday. Yeah, next Thursday. And I don't have the topics in front of me, so I don't know what it's going to be a mystery topic. It'll be a mystery topic. Yes. So as with always, you can comment your questions, which we'll add to the list of things that we're dealing with. You can send us a message, but we just want to be helpful in your journey and answer the kind of questions that you're struggling with. So we hope, I know a number of people that would be watching both live and listening after the fact. We'll probably have people that are involved in some new age or some kind of alternative approach to spirituality. And I think this will be helpful for them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we bless everybody. Bless you all. Thanks for joining. And wonderful to see everybody. Take a look at the book. And God bless.